In next week's budget, we'll have a bit more to say.
We can talk about these things in almost exactly a week's time. I don't intend to announce any cost of living help that will be in the budget next week.
You'll see all of the decisions the government's made through our budget.
Politics is a game perpetually in flux. We are either assessing things that have happened or, it feels increasingly, waiting for something to happen or land, whether that's a policy announcement, a budget or an election date, before we can make a judgment. Budgets are a particular case in point. They are mostly reported in terms of what surprises they contain or whether they are enough. But they are also an opportunity to freeze time for a moment and assess where the economy has come from and where it is going to, as well as what the government might be doing for us individually. That's particularly important as we approach the end of the parliamentary term and, as voters, are weighing up what the government of the day has achieved and whether it deserves our support. Or, as Opposition Leader Peter Dutton said a couple of weeks ago,
I just say to all Australians, look at what a government or a political party does, not what they say they will do.
if we look at what the government has done, Treasurer Jim Chalmers has framed his fourth budget as a report card on the first term of the Albanese government, comparing the government's record on spending, tax and economic growth against the so-called pre-election economic and fiscal outlook from 2022, which set out for all sides of politics where the economy and budget were up to at that time. Times, of course, were still grim then. The economy was just coming out of a pandemic. There is a much more confident tone to the Treasurer's language and the budget forecasts than we have seen in some time. The lurking fear that a recession is not far away has disappeared.
We've got inflation down, wages and incomes are up, unemployment is low, we've got the debt down, interest rates have started to be cut, and now growth is rebounding solidly as well.
All this is true. For the first time in the post-war era, we have avoided a recession after a significant inflation shock. Most people kept their jobs. Credit for that might go largely to the Reserve Bank, but the criticisms of the government that it should have cut spending more to help get inflation down faster now have to be judged against the fact that inflation has fallen and the private sector is set to take over from the public sector as the driver of growth. In dollar terms, that means growth in the economy is forecast to add $36.4 billion to the budget, which will in turn fund $34.8 billion of policy decisions outlined tonight. That is, the government strategy has worked. The Treasurer tonight argued that the budget was $207 billion better off than it was when Labor came to office, and that about half of that was due to spending cuts, or at least restraint. Things have been really difficult for millions of Australians. The $17 billion tax cuts announced in the budget, which had not been expected, will give angry voters, particularly those who have been disillusioned and disengaged, a reason to at least pay a little more attention. And once the government has their attention, it can point to the other cost of living measures it has been rolling out, including energy relief, Medicare bulk billing, and cutting pharmaceutical prices. And once again, it can point out the Coalition's past opposition to many of those measures. The forecasts suggest, if not sunlit uplands, a slightly kinder economy in the next year or two, in which people will enjoy lower interest rates, more disposable income, and a faster growing economy as the rate of annual growth lifts from 1.5 to 2.5%. Judged against what they said they would do, the government scores pretty well in this budget. As to the question of what it should do, that is, be more ambitious, reform more, the tax cuts will at the margin appease calls for tax reform for the time being. The budget gives the government an alibi for most issues going into the election campaign, which will make the Coalition's critiques of its strategy look somewhat pallid. The opposition has to make some quick decisions about whether it has any choice but to match what the government does. One issue that will remain contentious is migration. The budget papers are forecasting a net overseas migration number of 225,000 by 2027. Last week, the figure for the year to September was released. It was 380,000. And Treasury admits that number was not taken into account in its new forecast. Higher migration is already a target of the Coalition, and this forecast is likely to be an easy point of attack as it considers how it responds to this budget and tells us what it says it will do.